Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, best-selling author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Are you a risk taker? Maybe you're not even sure how to define risk. Well, how about this visual of someone risking their life by walking on a 1-inch wide cable? Sounds pretty risky to me. Or what about joining up with this well-known group of death-defying performers known as Cirque du Soleil? Would you be willing to try to do what they do each and every night? Well, speaking of Cirque du Soleil, I've had the opportunity to watch their death-defying act on 7 different occasions, and believe me, these folks are some of the best performers I've ever seen. Now, until I read a book authored by John Bacon called The Spark, I assumed that all of these performers were risk takers. But upon closer examination, I actually found out that these performers and all of the engineers that plan out their shows are not risk takers at all. In fact, according to Mr. Bacon's findings, the key to the success of the Cirque show is not blindly taking risks, but taking on the mentality of safety first. Something savers should take note of, which is the subject of today's program. Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, safe money specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, before you start walking out on a financial tightrope and risking your retirement, I'm going to reveal the keys to using and enjoying your money without taking a bunch of unnecessary risk. But first, let me introduce the producer of today's show, America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander. Okay, let's set the stage. You know nothing about walking on a tightrope, neither do I. Yet there you are, convinced by someone to climb up hundreds of feet to a small platform so you can try your hand at tightrope walking. The person who convinced you to go up there and risk your life is ironically safely on the ground below, hollering up encouraging words and suggesting you leave the safety of the platform and start walking on a 1-inch wide cable with no safety net to catch you if you happen to fall. He's on the ground and you're in midair with no clue what you're doing. Sounds crazy, and you'd probably say, well, Tony, without any training in tightrope walking, I'd never do something like that. Yet, that's what many of you are doing with your 401k plans and other retirement accounts. Folks, I see this time and time again. Savers blindly risking their life savings with no safety net below. Hardworking savers who blindly trust their money to advisors with no process in place that allows them to safely use and enjoy their money without the fear of running out of it. This is why I created something called the 5 Ps, and why having a safe process in place to not only roll your 401k over, but to manage safely the retirement is the key to a worry-free retirement. Now you stay tuned. I'm going to show you how to create a safety net and how to create a balance between safety and risk when it comes to your money. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back.
At age 60, my husband's 62. So what percent of my 401k should I put into an annuity for what you call mailbox money? And what percent kept in the market to continue to try to get gains?
Yeah, so a lot of people tend to be one or the other. They either try to invest a lot of money in annuities, or they tell you to put all your money in the stock market. We're kind of unique. We know about both sides of the aisle. We're very, very experienced in annuities. And I've been a registered investment advisor for years. We've used the stock market for years. In fact, we have something called our split IRA concept. So what happens is somebody gets ready to retire, they're nearing retirement. They roll the 401k over to Tony Walker Financial, and then through my experience, I sit down personally with them and we determine what percentage needs to be in the annuities and what percentage needs to be in the stock market. And a lot of that is, it just depends. You know, some people don't want to take a lot of risk. Some people need what we call mailbox money, and other people just really want us to help them think through that. So there really is no one padded answer. What I've found is most people kind of like a little of both, which we can do. Taxes, fees, penalties, complicated government rules, all add up to worry, confusion, and the loss of enjoyment of your hard-earned money. That's why I'm offering a free educational resource to help free you from the bondage of your 401k called 401k Rollovers Made Easy. If you're over the age of 59, retired, have a 401k at a previous employer, download 401k Rollovers Made Easy at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Really enjoying this book, The Spark. I drug this back out and referencing it a lot in the show by Mr. John Bacon. We're talking about risk and safety and how to balance those act, and we're talking about Cirque du Soleil a lot. But let's get back to the stock market. As we record today's show on July 7th, 2020, the stock market is roaring back from a decimating government shutdown of our economy as a result of the flu, otherwise known as COVID-19. Now, the recent 30% overnight drop of the stock market reminds us that risk is real, and if you are retired or nearing retirement, and assuming you're not willing to take a bunch of risk with your money at this stage of the game, the balancing act you must perform between risk and safety has to be considered. To remind us of just how risky the stock market can be, I asked my favorite son-in-law and fellow fiduciary, Trey, to research the worst stock market crash of all time, which took place in 1929. And as this chart depicts, from 1929 to 1932, you would have lost 90% of your money. In other words, if you had $100,000 in 1929, by 1932, you would have been left with a whopping $10,000. So what caused the crash of 29? Well, the so-called experts, who, by the way, never saw that one coming, cited low wages, proliferation of debt, a struggling agriculture sector, and an excess of large bank loans that could not be liquidated. So, could we have another crash like 1929? Well, the answer, of course, is who knows. But we did have 3 consecutive years of losses from 2000 to 2002. And I want to share with you this graph, and here's why I'm sharing with it. Folks, if you're retired or retiring soon, I want to show you the effects of taking money out during a down market and how scary this really is. If we imagine that somebody back in 1999 was 60 and retired, and let's say they had $300,000 in their 401k plan, and the market did go up that year 21%. All right, great, okay. The High Wire Act is working. And they had to take out $20,000. They needed some income, so they still had $338, and all is well in Mudville. But then we go to the next year, 2000. Look at this. The market went down about 9%. They still needed to live, right? We're in retirement now, folks. You're not 45. In this case, you're retired and you need income. They take out another $20,000. The account goes down a little bit, but you're feeling okay. You're hoping the market comes back, right? You're just barely out on the wire. Not a big deal, right? Well, 2001, we know what happened. The market dropped almost 12%. You still got to live. You still got to buy groceries. You still got to gas up the car. And you need your $20,000. Whoops, that's starting to drop now. Just a couple of years before, you got $300,000. Now you got $237,000, not real worry-free. And then finally, a lot of people don't realize this, 2002, the market went down 22%. You needed your $20,000, right? And look at what happened. All of a sudden, you're only into retirement 4 years, and your $300,000 is now worth $169,000. These losses can be devastating to your 401k balance. And to balance out the act between risk and safety, how do we do that? How do we get decent returns on our money without putting it all at risk? Well, in comes our split IRA to the rescue. This is something we created years ago. This thing works great, folks. Now, here's what we do. We couple that with a little bit of risk, if that's what you want, with our Charles Schwab platform. Now, we're real proud of this platform. In fact, since starting this in 2017, I used to use Charles Schwab in the 90s, so this is nothing new to me. But since starting the platform back up again with Charles Schwab, we are now up, as of the date of this recording, to nearly $100 million just with Schwab. And then, of course, in the other bucket, that's our guaranteed bucket. We call that our mailbox money bucket. That's where we make sure that we don't run out of money. So here's the beauty of this process. We have the Schwab bucket here for flexibility and access to your money at a very, very low fee, usually half of what most money managers are charging. And then you've got the annuities on the back end to make sure you don't run out of money. To take advantage of this is really easy. You just go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and you're going to click on the Let's Get Started button, and we will be happy to show you how our split IRA can provide safety and security with a little bit of risk if you want it. Okay, now, in the time remaining in this segment, I got to talk about this book again, The Spark by John Bacon. And he shares some secrets behind the success of these death-defying group of performers called the Cirque du Soleil. And here's the 3 keys behind their success of meshing safety and risk. First of all, if you're going to take the risk you know you must take. I like to use the example of myself. I travel back and forth up and down I-65 a lot. I have to. I work in Bowling Green, Louisville, and Lexington. I head over to 64. Well, the highway is a pretty dangerous place, folks. There's a lot of risk associated with that, but I take that risk because it's worth it. Now, the second thing you got to do, you got to collaborate with others who know what they're doing, and here's the key, want you to succeed. You know, the Cirque du Soleil folks, they all collaborate, they work with their engineers, and that's the way we work with our clients. You have to have someone who wants you to succeed. Now, do I want to make money at what I do? Of course I do. But I want you to be worry-free, and I want you to have a game plan that allows you to use and enjoy your money. That's what this is all about. And then finally, I love this one. If you're going to work with somebody, the third and most important feature of all of this is you've got to trust whoever it is you're working with. I mean, think about it. When somebody's going to climb up on those high wires with the Cirque du Soleil, you better hope that the person establishing or erecting those high wires knew what they're doing. There's a lot of trust that goes into that. Same way with finances. You have to have a written game plan with a fiduciary, with a staff that's going to support that game plan, not just now. It's easy to sell you something, but it's going to be there for the long haul. And at Tony Walker Financial, that's what we do for our clients. Okay, when we come back, I got some interesting stuff to talk about with 401ks. Can you take your 401k and put it in our split IRA? And if so, under what circumstances? Good stuff coming your way. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back.
And now it's time for the adventures of Stella, Scout, and Ivy.
Scout, come on, find Scout.
Where's Scout?
Right there.
Where's Ivy? Where's Ivy?
There she is.
There she is.
Where's Scout?
Go find Scout.
Get her.
You've been watching the adventures of Stella, Scout, and Ivy.
Our Tony in the Trenches question comes from Sarah over in Bowling Green, who asked, Tony, I have a 401k, I'm 60 years of age, and it's still with my current employer. She's working, contributing 12%, the employer's matching 4%, and I would like to roll over my 401k to Tony Walker Financial. Should I keep contributing to my employer if, in fact, I do something like that? So it's interesting that she would ask that because that brings up a good question. Sometimes people watch this show and they say, well, gosh, I've got a 401k that I want to safeguard. Can I move that over to you guys at Tony Walker Financial? Well, there's generally 5 different scenarios that play out that allow people to successfully move their 401k over with no upfront cost or taxes to move it over to an IRA. You got to know what you're doing to do this. And let's share those 5 issues that come up. So how do we help people? Number 1, people who are already retired with a previous 401k at their former employer. So obviously, maybe you've retired, you haven't thought about it, the 401k is still back at your old employer. What we would do is our office would move that 401k over to our Charles Schwab platform, and then we would meet to decide how you want to handle it, how much income you need. We do all the work, and again, our fee to do everything is 0.8%. Again, usually about half of what most people charge to do that. Second thing is people who are already retired. Now in this situation, they've already moved their 401k over to an individual IRA, but they don't have a game plan. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, I moved it over, or somebody's trying to handle it and they're charging a bunch of fees, or I think they slapped it in an annuity and made a bunch of commissions, but I don't know what in the heck's going on here. So these are people that are tired of not getting the proper service. They want a written game plan. that can be rolled back over, of course, to Tony Walker Financial. Number 3, this is kind of interesting, people who are getting ready to retire in the next couple of years. So sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, well, I'm 64, I'm going to retire in a couple of years. You want me to just holler at you when I'm retired? And I'll say, no, that's probably not the best thing to do, because we want to make sure to get that 401k rolled over and get it in our split IRA. That way, when you really do want to pull the trigger, or, this is happening a lot. Some people are getting terminated. They weren't planning on retiring. You've already got everything in place to meet the challenges and to get you immediate access to your income. So again, that leads us to our next point. If you're over 59 and a half, this is a biggie here. I'm going to go over a whiteboard in just a second. Over 59 and a half, but you're still working and you want to keep funding the 401k, but can you move it over to us? Yes. It's a little known rule in the tax laws. Most 401ks will allow you to do that. I'm going to show you how to do just that. And then finally, number 5, people who are still working. Had a gentleman come in last night. He switched jobs, so he's got a 401k from a previous employer. My suggestion is don't roll that over to the new employer. Roll that over to an individual IRA with us so that we can manage that properly, and hopefully we can put in place, depending on how much you have, some of that beloved mailbox money and get all that set up. Okay, and the time we have left, I'm going to kind of walk over to the whiteboard here. Aaron's dutifully moving cameras around, and I'm going to use an example, all right, of a 60-year-old husband and wife. They're both 60. One of them could be working, it doesn't matter. They file a joint income tax return, so total combined salaries of about $80,000. Their goal is to retire at 65. They want to be debt-free by that age. They have about $50,000 of, some mortgage left, a small car payment, etc. But by the time they retire in 5 years, they want to be totally out of debt. And also they want to save on taxes. They've watched this program, let's say. They've seen me talk about in the year 2026, these current low tax rates we're in are going to expire. That's going to be a big problem in my opinion, and I think taxes could go through the roof, so they want to save on taxes while they can. Now in this example, let's say they're putting in $10,000 into the 401k, and they get a small match from the employer of about $2,000. Not bad, but not great. They want to move into the split IRA concept. They want to get a plan in place. They want to have a fiduciary on staff now. They want to set up everything for their mailbox money. So can we roll this over? Yes, in most cases, because they're over the age of 59 and a half, and yes, they can still contribute. So what we would do, we would split that out. We do all this for you. So you'd have, I'll just abbreviate, we'd put a certain percentage over here in the Charles Schwab, and then we would have our beloved mailbox money, that's the annuity, would be over here. Again, no cost to initially set all this up. There's not going to be any taxes, any fees. We do hundreds of these a year. So then we're going to back this off. Again, folks, right now, they're only in a 12% tax bracket. If these taxes go through the roof, why in the world are we funding that thing, what I call the tax tumor? We're going to back that off, okay, to $4,000, because that's how much the match will give us. So we are going to put in enough to get the match. We're going to take that balance now of $6,000 a year, all right? And because taxes are so low, we're going to have them send that to their pocket. Now they can do a lot with that. They can help pay down the debt with that. They can increase their savings. The bottom line is now we are in full control, and then I'm going to show these people how they're going to be debt-free, how they're going to pay less in taxes, how there's not going to be any problem for them to retire at 65, and how we're going to have total flexibility and access to our money with also on the tail end of that thing, that beloved mailbox money. So if you're sitting there saying, well, Tony, I don't have anybody doing this kind of planning. It seems like all everybody wants to do is just get my money, and then when they get my money, the planning stops. That's not how we work at Tony Walker Financial. We have 3 full-time fiduciaries. We have 9 service experts that are there to help you long after the sale. Remember, folks, when you move your money over or roll over your 401k, that's just the beginning. That is not the end of the process. The process is just now beginning. So to get started with us, to see how we work and to see if this situation would fit your situation, log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, click on that Let's Get Started, and let's get started to see how we can help you worry less about money. Well, we've been talking a lot about sparks and flames and trapeze artists and high wires. Does the Bible have anything to say about that spark within us all that might be needed to be rekindled just a little bit? It sure does, but right now I'm going to get me a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. Well, our employee spotlight today is none other than our own Jennifer Jaggers, and I want to welcome Jennifer to the program.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I know you and Heather made the trip from Bowling Green to our Louisville studios today. What's it like driving down here knowing this is what I do once a week, is driving the roads of I-65? How was the drive, by the way?
I admire you for that. As a road rage kind of girl, better you than me.
Well, we are excited to have you, and again, we just wanted you to share briefly. First of all, I like to call you JJ, that's your new nickname. But first of all, about your background in banking. You came to us recently, and we're so fortunate to have you, but tell the audience a little bit about your background.
Okay. I actually started off pretty much my career in banking. I've always been on the loan side of banking, so I was a loan processor for a long time. I enjoyed that. I thought now since being here, I really enjoy the research aspect of this job. I totally did not know anything about this financial world. So I have enjoyed thoroughly learning the other side of finances, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. And you've done such a wonderful job. Of course, we've had some changes at Tony Walker Financial. We're growing like crazy. But you started out servicing our annuity business and client services, and you're still doing some of that. But talk about your role in terms of administering and getting all the new annuity business issued, and how detailed that is, and how much business we're doing now to help these savers.
After you bring the file back to me, I get all of the client's personal information. I put that into whichever insurance agency that we are using for that annuity that they have chosen. I submit that information. I make sure all of their suitability, which is their financial information, is correct and accurate, so that those annuities will be submitted. And when we get that annuity finalized back in the office, I put together a neat little binder for you to deliver to them at their final appointment.
And I guess sometimes I probably need to have you more in meetings. You don't get to see this, but the way we organize everything and the way we present everything, what would you speak to that? I mean, just the involved, detailed process of getting the annuities, putting them in the binders. We have the last day planners. Can you speak to that a little bit, and how good you feel that, hey, we've got the mission accomplished, here's your annuity, here's how we work at Tony Walker Financial?
Those binders are amazing to me. It takes everything that they have, everything that they've purchased, it puts that in a nice little graph for them. You have their actual paper copies of their annuities placed into that binder. So everything's very organized for that if they need that in the future while you're sitting there with them going over that.
And then they know too, they've got you, and now we got Mandy in the office, but they've got you to follow back up with service questions regarding those annuities.
Right. And anything as far as change of addresses, change of beneficiaries, anything that you need to change on that current annuity contract, we can get that taken care of.
Well, JJ, we appreciate your work so much. We're so happy to have you at Tony Walker Financial, and look forward to writing many more annuities and helping all these savers.
Thank you, Tony. Happy to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Today I've referred often to a book by John Bacon depicting the life and times of a performance group by the name of Cirque du Soleil. The name of the book is simply called The Spark. This book, The Spark, assumes that we all have within us a fire, or more specifically, a spark. Problem is, it remains a spark until someone or somebody comes along and ignites it and puts it into a fire. The key to the performance success during Cirque du Soleil shows is the sincere desire of those performers to create something bigger than themselves, to push themselves beyond what they thought they were capable of doing, and in the end, to provide the audience a great and wonderful experience. Funny, God kind of works the same magic in all of us. Assuming you have turned your life over to God, do you realize that God has placed within you a spark that He is wanting to flame? It's called the Holy Spirit, and during turbulent times such as these, it's easy for even the most faithful of Christians to get down, to give up, and worse yet, think that God has given up on us. One of my favorite books on this subject is by Richard Sibbes called The Bruised Reed. Sibbes reminds us how God will never allow this spark that's within us to go out. In fact, he quotes Isaiah 42:3, where it says, "A bruised reed he shall not break, and a dimly burning wick," or other version of that might say a smoking flax, "he will not extinguish." What Isaiah was prophesying about was the coming of Christ, as we see this in Matthew 12:20, where it says, "A battered reed he will not break off, and a smoldering wick he will not put out." So what does a bruised reed and a smoldering wick have to do with you and your money? Well, I think everything, because in this life, my friend, You will be battered at times, you will be shaken at times, and there will be times when you feel like that old flame of passion for life is getting snuffed out. But just like a reed blowing in the wind that does not break, or a smoldering flax that does not fully extinguish, with God's help, He's not going to break you. The flame's not going to go out. That spark will turn into a fire. You see, the moment you turn to God, He ignites that spark with something called the Holy Spirit. And no matter how down and out you might feel or worried about the future, He will not allow that flame to extinguish itself. So how do I do that, Tony? Well, you're probably not going to find it watching people yakking on nightly talk shows. No, the only way to fuel that spark within you is to throw some fuel on it, and that's to turn to the pages of Scripture. Let me give you this little challenge. Try this. Take 15 minutes a day reading God's Word to begin flaming the spark that He's already put within you. And I assure you, you do that, you'll start worrying a whole lot less about life and money. His Word will keep that flame burning brightly, and you can take that to the bank. Well, how about you? You might be sitting there saying, encouraging words, Tony, appreciate that, but let's get back to this risk in my money. How can I try to create this balance you keep talking about safety and some risk? Well, that's easy. We do this all the time. It's called the Worry-Free Retirement. To get started, to see a game plan for your personal situation, for your 401k, how our split IRA concept may be exactly what you're looking for, all you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and click on that Let's Get Started button. Now, what will happen is your information will be sent confidentially to our offices, and we can either arrange a phone call at no cost or obligation, or if it warrants, we can meet in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. So do it now. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Well, next week we're going to start a brand new series. This is an interesting concept. If you're a saver, we're going to deal with the aspect of greed. We don't want to be a greedy saver out there, and this is going to be an interesting show dealing with the human nature of all of us, where we want more and more and more, and the danger of thinking that way. Hope you've enjoyed today's program. Between now and then, you remember, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.